In this video, we're going to start working on fetch posts and users. So remember, the goal here is to call fetch posts, wait for it to get all of the posts and retrieve them and whatnot. We're then going to get the list of posts and so on, all that good stuff. All right, so let's flip back over to our action creator file, and we're going to create this new action creator at the very top. So I'm going to say export const fetch posts and users, like so. All right, and we're going to wire this up with Redux Thunk, just as we have with all the other action creators as well. And we're going to use that same kind of complicated kind of looking syntax here. So we're going to have one arrow function that returns an arrow function that is async. So it's going to have some async await syntax in it. And we're going to again receive that argument of dispatch so that we can dispatch our own actions inside of here. Okay, so here's where things get just a little bit, tiny bit challenging. Okay, inside of fetch posts and users, we are going to call fetch posts and we are going to call fetch user multiple times. Our application, like all of our React code, all of our components, are going to call this action creator alone. They are no longer going to call the other two action creators we have. So we're not going to expect that our component is going to call fetch posts and fetch the list of posts, then eventually dispatch them. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we call fetch posts and users, that is the only action creator that you and I are going to call. And so we need to make sure that when we eventually delegate to fetch posts to actually go and fetch the posts, we handle that action creator appropriately. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure that this action creator right here still has some action that is going to get dispatched at the end of the day. So in other words, you and I cannot just call like fetch posts and say, okay, like let's get our posts and just kind of like leave it there. Instead, we need to make sure that when we call this action creator, whatever action or whatever function it returns gets dispatched as well. So it goes into that entire pipeline of being dispatched, goes through the middlewares, and then eventually goes into the reducers. So long story short, what I'm really saying here is that when we call fetch posts, we have to pass the result of calling that thing into our dispatch function. So we are now kind of manually dispatching this action creator, or the result of calling the action creator. So now think about what happens. We're going to call fetch posts right here. That's going to invoke this function. That's going to return this inner function right here. So we are going to dispatch a function. Remember, whenever we dispatch a function, Redux Thunk is going to pick it up and automatically invoke it. So Redux Thunk is going to see this inner function right here and invoke it and pass in dispatch as the first argument. So then this inner function is going to make a request over to our API, get the list of posts, and then it's going to dispatch its own action internally and start that entire process of updating our reducers. So again, whenever we call an action creator from inside of an action creator, we need to make sure that we dispatch the result of calling the action creator. Okay, so that code right there is going to work exactly as we would expect. So we're going to call fetch posts, fetch the list of posts, and then eventually update our reducer. So now we want to go on to the next step here, which is to get the list of posts. Now this is where the second challenge starts to come in. So remember, whenever we call fetch posts, that is going to initiate an asynchronous request over to our API and get our list of posts. So we need to somehow make sure that we do not attempt to get at our list of posts that have been fetched until this action creator right here has completed and has fetched all the appropriate data. So to do so, this is going to be a little bit crazy. We're going to put the await keyword in front of it like so. Now the reason that we put the await keyword right there, it's going to make sure that when we dispatch that action creator and this inner function eventually gets called, the await keyword right here is going to essentially make sure that we wait for this API request to be completed before we move on and do anything else inside of our new action creator right here. All right, I know this is a little bit intense, but honestly, those two steps are the hardest part to understand. So one more quick review. Again, we call our action creator. That's going to return the inner function. We're going to make sure we dispatch that thing. So this inner function is going to show up inside of Redux Thunk and get invoked with dispatch. Then to make sure that we don't try to do any other logic inside of our action creator until we have successfully fetched that list of posts, we're going to make sure that we put the await keyword right here in front of that entire call. And that's going to make sure that we're not going to progress down to the next line of code right here until we have successfully fetched the list of posts and dispatched the action for it. Now at this point, I feel like it would be really valuable to maybe put a debugger statement or a console log inside of this action creator and then attempt to call it just to make sure that you really understand the idea of what's going on here. So I'm going to put down about a console log right here, and I'll say fetched posts, and then I'm going to put a console log right above, and I'll say about to fetch posts, like so. And then I'm going to flip back over to one of my components, and we're going to wire up the fetch posts and users action creator so that this thing actually gets called, so we can see these console logs in action. So to do so, I'm going to flip back over to my post list component. At the very top, I will make sure I import this new action creator called fetch posts and users. And then inside of this component did mount lifecycle method right here, I'm going to remove the old action creator, and instead I will call this.props.fetch posts and users. And then finally, we'll go down to the very bottom of the file and hook up that action creator to our connect function as well. So down at the very bottom, I'll find connect. We don't need to wire up fetch posts anymore. Instead, we will wire up fetch posts and users. And while we're at it, we can actually remove the import for fetch posts back up at the top as well, because we don't really need that action creator anymore. Okay, so let's save this and we'll see if we get those console logs successfully. All right, so I'm going to flip back over and I'll open up my console. We'll refresh, and you'll see that I do get a 404 right here. This is to be expected. You probably do not see a 404, you might see one. You'll notice that this is trying to fetch users with 19999. So in reality, that JSON placeholder endpoint, it actually has the ability to support people posting data up to that API. So every now and then you're going to see kind of a strange record appear right there. So you can completely ignore my 404 right there. Chances are you are not seeing the same thing. Much more importantly, you'll notice that we have the two console logs inside of here, and we still see our list of posts appearing on the screen. So we see about to fetch posts, and then I don't know if you noticed it, but when we saw that console log appear, there was the slightest little delay where we were waiting for that list of posts to be fetched and then processed by our reducers, and then we saw the second console log. Let's do that again really quickly here. So I'm going to refresh, and you'll see the first one, and then there's the tiniest little delay, and then you saw the second one appear. So that means that this await syntax right here is definitely making sure that we do not progress down to the next line of code until we have successfully fetched the list of posts, dispatched an action, and updated our reducer with all those different fetch posts. Okay, we spent a pretty good amount of time on this, and I hope it is at least somewhat clear. Let's take a pause right here, and we'll start to finish up this new revamped action creator in the next video.